I just recorded this entire session and it turns out it didn't record, so I got to do this all over again. I want to open by stating that this is the first possible major story that I've broken, and I'm truly excited about it. If you could please share, like, comment, and subscribe to help get the story out, that would be greatly appreciated. On to the show. Mark Carney visits Qatar only days after Brookfield announces deal with Qatar AI company Kai on this episode of In Focus, hosted by Critical Chris. Welcome to another episode of In Focus with Critical Chris. Not short enough to be real and real enough to not be too short. Just enough to get in, get out, and get on with your day. I got a potentially spicy coincidence coming your way. Today, Wealth Moose made a post on X that caught my eye. Qatar and Brookfield Asset Management announced a $20 billion investment partnership, and Mark Carney just happened to be visiting Qatar. Nothing to see here, just elite timing. So I thought I'd take a look into it. According to Prime Minister Mark Carney's website, on January 18th, 2026, the Prime Minister Mark Carney met with Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, in Doha, during the first ever visit by Canadian Prime Minister to Qatar. Remember that. The leaders discussed the growing Canada-Qatar strategic partnership with immense potential and opportunities to deepen diplomatic, security, development, cultural, and economic ties. Prime Minister Carney underscored Canada's strengths in development, education, resources, manufacturing, and health, and its unparalleled investment potential in areas of shared interest. Interesting point there. Unparalleled investment potential in areas of shared interest. We'll touch on that in a moment. The Prime Minister recognized His Highness's leadership in promoting global peace and stability, particularly in the Middle East, and emphasized Canada's gratitude for the many times Qatar has provided consular and diplomatic assistance. The Prime Minister extended an invitation to His Highness to visit Canada in the coming year. The leaders welcomed this highly positive visit and agreed to remain in close contact. Let's take a look at Canada-Qatar relations, shall we? Well, Canada and Qatar have a shared modest investment together, with Canada exporting $159 million to Qatar in 2024, with imports from Qatar totaling $166 million. Note that though Qatar only accounts for 0.02% of Canadian trade, we are operating under a trade deficit with them. But that's neither here nor there. Let's take a closer look here for a second. The Qatar Investment Authority has made several equity investments in Canada, including purchasing a 4% stake in Ivanhoe Mines in September of 2025. Interesting. So Canada has given up more of its resources to a foreign country. But what is more important is the timeline we're about to see. Specifically, remember the name Qatar Investment Authority. In September of 2025, Qatar Investment Authority makes a significant investment in Canadian resources. As an aside, in a way this hurts Canada. Sure, there is regional capital investment, which can be seen as a good thing. However, having another foreign authoritarian state getting a share in the value drawn from ownership in Canadian extracted resources could be dicey and should ultimately be controlled by local enterprises. I digress. This is just my opinion. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. So following this investment by 2 months, we have another bombshell announcement occurring on the 9th of December. Brookfield and Kai, Qatar's AI company and a subsidiary of Qatar Investment Authority, remember that name? Today announced a strategic partnership to establish a $20 billion joint venture focused on artificial intelligence infrastructure in Qatar and select international markets. 2 months after Canada grants Qatar access to invest in a local mine, extracting wealth to a foreign authoritarian Muslim-controlled state, Mark Carney's love interest, and we're not talking about Diana Fox here, signs a major investment deal with the very same Qatari-controlled authority, the Qatar Investment Authority. This investment amounts to $20 billion. So where are we at now? Over the last year, Qatar has increased investment in Canada. In September, it specifically invests in local resources. 2 months later, Brookfield, Mark Carney's financial haven, invests $20 billion in Qatar-based AI. And then a month later, Carney shows up with a trip to Qatar. And this is the first time a prime minister has ever traveled there. Could this just be a series of very beneficial coincidences? Perhaps. But what did they discuss? Well, let's take a look at the public announcement by Mark Carney's team. The global landscape is rapidly changing, leaving economies, businesses, and workers in a state of uncertainty. In response, Canada is focused on what we can control, securing new trade and investment partnerships so we are not reliant on a single country, but more resilient to global shocks. We are positioning Canada as a strong, reliable partner to secure new capital, develop new export markets, and create new opportunities for Canadian workers and businesses. To advance that mission, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, traveled to Doha, Qatar, the first ever visit by a sitting Canadian Prime Minister to the state. Remember that. This is the first time that any Prime Minister has ever visited this state. The Prime Minister met with the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, to discuss increasing trade, commerce, investment, and security cooperation. Upon concluding the visit, the leaders announced a commitment from Qatar to make significant strategic investments in Canadian nation-building projects. These investments will get major projects built faster, supercharge our clean energy, health, AI, and defense industries, and create thousands of high-paying careers and sustain prosperity for Canadian workers, not to mention Brookfield employees. Building on this momentum, the Prime Minister and the Emir issued a joint statement committing to accelerated two-way investment and collaboration across AI, quantum computing, aerospace, defense technologies, advanced manufacturing, agriculture, and agri-food. There it is. This is a direct conflict of interest. Qatar invests in Canada. Brookfield follows up with a major investment in AI amounting to $20 billion. Carney then flies to Qatar, an unprecedented move, the first time a prime minister has ever made that trip, oddly convenient, to announce a new joint statement committing Canada to an accelerated two-way investment and collaboration across AI. If you haven't spotted it by now, I do know a fantastic psychologist that would be willing to book you in for an IQ test. Let me know your thoughts below. Until next time, Chris out.